Welcome to this Prepare for IELTS video, and in this video we're going through a model answer to an IELTS Writing Task 2 question on the topic of crime and punishment. It's an advantages and disadvantages question. Let's take a look. When people commit serious crime in most countries, they are sent to prison. What are the advantages and disadvantages of this approach? Let's go through our model answer, show you some of the great language you can use in answering this question. And we often use the present perfect. Examiners love the present perfect. They see it as a sign of somebody who can use complex grammar. So candidates who use present perfect are much more likely to get band 7 for their grammatical range and accuracy. So we often use it with an expression showing a time period which started in the past and runs to now, such as since time immemorial, which basically means forever, for all time. So we can use this with the present perfect because you're talking about a time that started in the past and runs until now. Detention describes a punishment in which a person is not allowed to leave a particular place, often a prison or a school classroom. So children who are naughty may get a detention. They are detained. Detained is a word that we'll come back to later. You can also use the phrase detention without trial in essays on crime and punishment. Try to avoid repeating words. There may be an alternative which uses a completely different grammatical structure to say the same thing, and you can see that here. So offenders, individuals found guilty of serious or violent crimes, convicts, they are all different ways of saying similar things, and when you can do this, when you can avoid repetition, the examiner will notice and give you credit. We can use like and such as to introduce examples, and using examples can show your wide vocabulary. Look at the examples we've included here. They will impress the examiner, show the examiner that you have good lexical resource, because we've used armed robbery, and this is the crime of stealing, often from a bank or a shop when you have a gun. And we've also used arson, which is the crime of deliberately starting a fire in order to damage or destroy something, usually a building. So you can get lots of vocabulary credit with your examples. We can refer to a prison term as a custodial sentence. Again, this is quite formal. The examiner will give you a lot of credit for using this term. We can sometimes use the present perfect with an adverb of frequency to describe something which started in the past and continues until now. So here we have social scientists have often wondered about something. That means they started wondering in the past, they still wonder now. We can use present perfect with these adverbs such as always, often and never. It can be quite effective. And of course, as I said earlier, using the present perfect usually gives you a lot of credit. Try to avoid repeating words when possible. Again, here we have merits and dangers, pros and cons. If you know synonyms, different ways of describing the same thing, you can do well. Moving on to the first main paragraph, and this is a good way to start a paragraph which basically has a list of arguments or points. So we start by writing, there are several reasons why something is true, and then you list your reasons. You can provide support for your reasons, you can explain them, but your paragraph will probably have 2, 3, or maybe 4 reasons for something, and introducing them with a sentence like this is a great idea. Victims are people who suffer because of other people's crimes or behavior. We sometimes refer to a victimless crime, or the fact that there is no such thing as a victimless crime. To advocate means to publicly support an idea and suggest that it is a very good idea. And it's really important that you know which verbs can be followed with ing forms and which verbs can be followed with infinitive. So here we have advocate locking offenders up. It's followed with an ing form. There are lots of verbs that you can use in 2 verb structures like that. A principle is a moral rule or a standard of good behavior or a basic idea which explains how something works. It's important that you don't spell this word incorrectly. There is another word, principal, ending P-A-L, which means main or most important. So don't get those two words mixed up. And retribution is a severe punishment which is deserved. So retribution is sometimes used as an argument to support prison. We can use colons, and these connect ideas. The information after the colon often explains or clarifies the information before the colon. So here we have, there is the principle of retribution, then the colon, and what comes after that is really an explanation of that idea. Examiners like colons because they show a sophisticated way of connecting your points. This is a participle clause. Again, it's complex grammar. So here we could write for the crime which has been committed, but we take out which has been and make a participle clause. Committed is a participle, and that's why we call this a participle clause. It looks complex, it looks formal. If you put something forward, you suggest an idea or plan so that other people can consider or discuss it. So you can put forward a notion, a plan, or an idea. In essays where you're making suggestions, this is a very useful verb. And a deterrent stops or deters. The verb to deter is connected with deterrent. It stops or deters people from doing something, usually something bad or wrong. Some people talk about a nuclear deterrent. If your country has nuclear weapons, nobody will attack or invade. You have a deterrent. We can follow those with an ing form. This is actually a participle clause to describe a particular group of people. So those thinking of criminal activity, or those spending time in prison, or those wanting to work harder. So we can use those and an ing. What we're really saying here is those who think of criminal activity, or those who think about criminal activity. So again, it's complex, it's formal, it's good grammar, it will get you credit. A harsh prison term is longer or more severe than expected or usual, so harsh collocates very nicely with prison term. And if something awaits you, it will come to you or it will happen to you in the future. To commit crime is an important collocation. Many candidates write to do a crime. This is wrong. The correct verb to use with crime is to commit. And if you are detained, we already had detention. So if you are detained, then you're kept in one place, a prison maybe, and you're not free or you're not allowed to leave. So although we have repeated a word here, we had different forms of it. So we had detention and detain, and that's great. Examiners will give you credit for that. Learn some useful prefixes and suffixes such as re. So here we have re-offend, as in offend again, commit another crime. So try to learn as many prefixes, little words that go in front of words, or suffixes, little words that go behind words, which will widen your vocabulary. Opponents oppose or disagree with something. You often want to put forward the views of opponents. So learn words from this family: opponents, to oppose, opposite. And vociferous people express their opinions loudly and repeatedly. So you can have vociferous critics, for example. A wrongdoer is a person who commits a crime or does something bad. So an excellent alternative to offender or criminal. And to rehabilitate means to return somebody to a healthy, normal, productive life after they have been in prison or very ill. So rehabilitation should be one of the aims of prison. It often isn't. When a prisoner has completed a prison sentence, they are released or freed. And here we have a useful phrase when we want to include an opinion or point which some people believe may be true. So it has been claimed that. Just notice that we follow this with that and a that clause, and these types of sentences with a phrase at the beginning like this and a that clause are actually quite easy to form and look very formal. To refer to somebody or something as means to speak or write about a person or thing, describing them in a different way. So prison is sometimes referred to as the university of crime. It is explained or described in a different way. Moving on to the conclusion, and after by or through, verbs are usually in the ing form, so by, denying. When we describe how something is done, we can use by, and the verb after that is usually an ing. We can use this with or without a singular or uncountable noun to refer back to an earlier idea. So here we have this approach, referring back to the text in blue. Of course, every time you link ideas, you make your text better, you improve your grade for coherence and cohesion. So that's what's happening here. We're linking two sentences, improving that grade. And two great words here, proponents and detractors. Proponents support an idea, detractors oppose or disagree with an idea. So you often have to refer to opinions, positions, and the people who hold them. So these are two great words you can use. The term the authorities is used when we refer to governments, the police, or those in power. So a nice alternative to the police, for example, if you want to avoid repeating the same word. And a perspective is a viewpoint or particular way of considering something. So you can see things from a scientific perspective, a political perspective, an economic perspective, or the perspective of farmers, for example. We can use circumstances and conditions, so in and under with these two words. So things can happen in certain circumstances or under particular circumstances or conditions, and we use these in similar ways to refer to the facts or events which make a situation the way that it is. So this is the model answer. We think you should now have a good understanding of it and maybe have a read through it, remembering some of the really great language that's in here which you could use. And if you're feeling ready, we have a little quiz for you. Would you like to have a go? It's multiple choice, A, B, C or D. Question 1. Anyone who commits a violent crime should go to prison. A something sentence is the only answer for these people. So we need a word indicating that they go to prison. The answer is, of course, a custodial sentence. We could say a prison sentence, but custodial sounds more formal. Next question. This approach will certainly have something. However, there will also be supporters, so we need a word meaning the opposite of supporters. And the only word in there is opponents. Advocates support something, supporters obviously support something, proponents do too, so the only word in the options meaning people who are against something is opponents. Next question. The crime of stealing, often from a bank or shop, when you have a gun, is called, hopefully an easy one, armed robbery. And many experts, something locking up offenders. Others believe that this approach simply does not work. So we need a word here meaning that they think it is a good idea, and it is advocate. And as we mentioned, advocate is followed by an ing form, locking up. New question. In certain something, sending criminals to prison might be successful. However, it will not be the answer in all cases. So we need the word here which we can put after in certain, and it is circumstances. We could put conditions here sometimes as well. So in certain conditions or in certain situations might work too. To return somebody to a healthy, normal, productive life after they have been in prison or very ill, what is the verb that we need here? Of course, to rehabilitate. We referred to the noun rehabilitation. So the rehabilitation of offenders, making prisoners who finish their time in prison live good and productive life, is the rehabilitation of offenders. We hope that you found that useful. We recommend that you look at the other videos in this section as well. They will help you prepare for this type of question, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you for watching.